Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our event today, which has been hosted by London Progression Collaboration entitled Diversity, Inclusion and the Role of Apprenticeships. My name is Stephen Ram Kissun. I'm the Senior Account Manager at London Progression Collaboration. I will be your chair today and we'll be facilitating our session today. I'm mindful of the fact that we'll have a number of people joining us. If I can ask everybody to keep your mic off. Today, before we start, this is our second installment of 3 events, and we'll be hosting this week as part of celebrating National Apprenticeship Week. As by way of housekeeping, I'd like to just begin to all of our audience members. We will be in listen-only mode. This webinar will be recorded and we will share afterwards. Please ask all of our members of the audience to post their questions in the Q&A function and not the chat function. That would be brilliant. And also, for those of you using social media today, during this event, our LPC Twitter handle is @LPC_progression. You can also find us on London Progression Collaboration on LinkedIn. Remember to using the hashtags #NAW2022 and Build the Future. I'm mindful of the fact that we've got a couple of people coming through. I think we've got about 20 so far. So for those of you unfamiliar with London Progression Collaboration, LPC is a not-for-profit initiative supporting small businesses in London and creating new apprenticeship opportunities for Londoners, for low-paid Londoners. We exist because we believe that apprenticeship is a powerful tool to enable social mobility, but also career progression and addressing skills shortages for small businesses. Since our launch, over 2 years ago, we've created over 750 apprenticeship opportunities and leveraged over £9 million from our large employer to support over 175 SMEs. LPC is working with more than 70 employer partners to enable that support and also creating that opportunity for low-paid Londoners. You can learn more about our work by visiting our website at www.thelpc.uk, and there you can find information about us and our reskilling campaign. I'm very excited about today's session, what we have planned, and also evidence shows that apprenticeships has a vital role to play for Londoners and creating new opportunities. We will hear from our panelists today who can share their insight and in terms of why apprenticeships has made a difference and also for their workforce. There will be an opportunity for our audience to set questions at the end of the session during our Q&A. But before I start and before I introduce my panel members, I'm very pleased to welcome Jules Pipe, CBE, London's Deputy Mayor for Planning, Regeneration and Skills. Jules, thank you so much for joining us today for the start of our event. I'd like to invite you to say a few words about diversity, inclusion, and the role of apprenticeships and the impact it has for Londoners. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Indeed.
Great. It won't be the first time I've started something and on mute over the last couple of years. So good morning and thanks, Stephen, for the introduction. I'm really pleased to be able to kick off this event this morning to mark National Apprenticeship Week, and I'm pleased that employers are interested in attending a discussion like this, because the reason I'm here to support this isn't just because it's National Apprenticeship Week, it's because the Mayor really puts a lot of store by in the importance of apprenticeships and what they can achieve for Londoners. I mean, as you'll all know, the pandemic's had a major impact on London's labour market, an impact that's not been felt equally by Londoners. We know that young Londoners, women, disabled Londoners, Black ethnic minority Londoners, they've all been particularly badly affected by the pandemic. And these groups were overrepresented in low-paying jobs before the pandemic struck, but they're also more likely to have lost their jobs as a result of it, or to have seen larger falls in income. So I think if we're to emerge from the pandemic as a fairer, more inclusive city, it's vital that all Londoners can gain the skills that they need to access and progress within good quality work. And the business case for workforce diversity, I hope we've we're really beginning to make inroads into that being widely accepted. It's just good for business to have a diverse workforce. But it remains the case that not all Londoners have access to the same opportunities, and that's clear. Addressing structural inequalities by supporting underrepresented groups into good work is for that reason, it's a key priority for the Mayor. And since taking control of the adult education budget in London, the Mayor's taken steps to ensure that education and training for adults in the capital is more accessible. We've been supporting people in low-paid work to access learning that they were previously locked out of because of the funding requirements. For those earning below the London living wage were required still to make a financial contribution, and we've removed that barrier. Another example, we are fully funding deaf Londoners to train for a first qualification in British Sign Language. And also more recently, we've made the move to fully fund refugees and people seeking asylum to be able to access courses from this academic year. So going forward, through the Helping Londoners into Good Work mission, that's the mission that forms part of the London Recovery Programme. We're really committed to supporting Londoners into good jobs. I mean, one of the things, we've got to lead by example. We've got to continue to create high quality London living wage paid jobs and apprenticeships right across the GLA group that pay fairly and crucially that are representative of the communities that we're there to serve at the GLA. We're also using the Mayor's Good Work Standard, responsible procurement frameworks, engaging with anchor institutions through the Anchor Institutions Charter to promote fair and inclusive recruitment practices amongst London's businesses. We're also establishing sector-specific academies as well, and they'll support Londoners to gain the really relevant skills they need to help them move into good work in sectors that are key to London's recovery. And examples of those would be the creative industries, huge opportunities there in well-paid, exciting jobs, and also the green economy. Inevitably, there's going to be lots of opportunity there going forward. And these academies, it includes supporting employers to address the structural barriers to engagement, recruitment, retention, progression for underrepresented groups in their workforces. And it endeavours to provide wraparound support so people can access and progress within good jobs and apprenticeships. Because apprenticeships are an absolutely vital piece of the skills puzzle. They've proven really effective, not only in opening up opportunities for the apprentices themselves, but also in helping employers reach a far more diverse talent pool and ensuring the capital's businesses aren't held back by skills shortages. But we know that so much more needs to be done, certainly to improve the quality and diversity of apprenticeships and to make the apprenticeship levy work better for everyone. Data shows that increasingly the levy system is incentivising apprenticeships for older Londoners at higher levels of learning, all at the expense of disadvantaged Londoners needing support with access to lower level essential skills. We also know that the levy isn't being spent fully. Over £1 billion of the levy funds nationally expired between about May 2020 and beginning of 2021. Just in that period alone, £1 billion, and that money was returned to the Treasury from levy paying employers. So we want to make sure Londoners and London's businesses are getting as much as they can from London's contribution to the levy pot. And responsibility for apprenticeships funding and policy currently sits with central government. So the Mayor can't act directly, but what we are doing is lobbying the government for the powers and funding to establish a devolved London Apprenticeship Service, which we would contend would better meet London's needs. But in the meantime, the London Progression Collaboration has brilliantly shown that it's possible and what's possible within what is currently a flawed national system. The LPC has been able to create apprenticeships which support underrepresented groups and address business needs. They've been facilitating the transfer, mainly through the facilitation of the transfer of levy funds, and directly supporting SMEs to access those funds. So the Mayor and I were really pleased to have partnered with IPPR and JP Morgan on what's been a terrific initiative that's had real impact. Its achievements are all the more impressive given the really challenging economic circumstances we've been facing. The LPC was envisaged before the pandemic began. So what they've achieved throughout a very difficult period has been very impressive. So I'd encourage any employers thinking of recruiting apprentices to contact the LPC and make use of the support on offer there. So it's great that people have wanted to hear about the LPC and hear from the panel today. I hope their expertise and your discussions today will help and inspire you to create inclusive opportunities for Londoners from all backgrounds, enabling them really to change their circumstances and participate fully in all that London has to offer. I'm sorry I can't stay for the whole event. I had to duck out of a meeting to be with you for these few minutes, but I wanted to because of the importance that both the Mayor and I place on apprenticeships and what they can do for Londoners. So I hope you have a good morning. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Jules, for your introduction to today's event. It really emphasised how important this topic is. Really appreciate your input. It's much appreciated. I know you're all keen to learn about from our panelists insight and knowledge and how they can apply that in their organisation. And with no further ado, allow me to introduce my panel members. I'm really pleased to be joined by Dutnall. Lauren is the Chief of Staff at Vorboss and has been there for the last 2.5 years. In that time, she's seen the business grow in terms of 16 employees up to 300 in the past 12 months. With a passion for employee involvement and experience, training and development, and also creating an inclusive workplace. Lauren shares apprenticeship fundamental in achieving that diversity in the workplace. Vorboss is the only dedicated enterprise network challenging the telecom status quo by building a different type of fiber company using exclusivity and opportunity at its heart. My second member is Mutlib. Isa is the Chief Executive of the BAME Apprenticeship Alliance, whose mission is to promote apprenticeship diversity and increase access to high quality apprenticeship opportunities for those from the underrepresented talent. He's been actively involved in the sector for the past 5 years, working with a number of high profile business organizations, enabling a career pathway and also using the workforce diversity to help companies recruit from Black, Asian, ethnic minority communities. My third member of the panel is Mariana Stefani. Mariana took part in the talent path with a provider called LDN Apprenticeships, a training provider based in London, in July 2021. Since September to date, Mariana is an associate consultant with a Platinum Salesforce consultancy based in London called Pracedo. Mariana is working towards her level 4 business analyst apprenticeship standards. And Mariana is very passionate about technology and problem solving and communication and believes that with her employer, she has a successful career that combines all. My last and final panel member is James Adeleke. James is the Chief Executive and founder of Generation Success, an award-winning social enterprise company based in London. James and the organisation work with over 70 large employers across the UK and the Republic of Ireland, tackling social inequalities in society and to connect diverse talent paths to careers. This is delivered through Generation Success, diversity and inclusion consultancy, training and early talent recruitment activities. James founded the organisation over a decade ago after witnessing the struggles many of his contemporaries from a low background witnessed due to their social and economic background. So with no further ado, allow me to kick this discussion off. I'd like to open the discussion to all of our panel members by asking a question which I've asked me to answer. Why do you think apprenticeships is such an important role to play in businesses in terms of improving the opportunities for underrepresented groups? If I could ask James first, and then I'll work around. Thank you.
It always happens to one person. So fantastic, Stephen. That is a great question. Now, in order to answer that question, I just wanted to say how the biggest factor for social mobility in this country after the war, after World War II, was job creation and new types of jobs and roles that were needed to be filled. The reason why apprenticeships are so important, if they are done right, is that they'll make the UK economy even stronger, even better. Now, apprenticeships have provided opportunity for employers to be as innovative as their minds will allow. Because trust me, we worked with some employers and they are just so risk adverse. They are still trapped in doing things the same way. Now, and when I've worked with employers, I've seen actually a lot of them are paying lip service when it comes to diversity and the fact that they see their employees as being their key asset. And when you compare how much is invested across Europe in terms of employee training and attraction and retention, you know, you can see that in Holland, in France, in Germany, how those employers invest twice as much in training for their employees than in the UK. And there have been other factors in impacting social mobility in the UK, such as 0-hour contracts, the gig economy, inflation. Apprenticeships have a huge role to address some of these issues, because if we can upskill if you can not only attract diverse talent, you can utilize their unique, their different mindsets and their talents, but also train them up to an amazing level to make us competitive globally. We can actually create we can actually create a fantastic economy for everyone, not just for the few.
Thank you there, James. That was very insightful. Thank you very much. If I could offer that same question to Lauren.
Sure, thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here. So for us, as a very fast-growing company in the last year, we've really felt the benefit of having apprentices on our team, because we've really felt the buy-in that you get from bringing in people at that level. So before we had our rapid growth in the last year, we had 6 apprentices with us. And since then, we now have 120 apprentices, but it's been amazing to see the growth, in particular from those 6 original apprentices. They are incredibly dedicated to the company. We have their complete buy-in, and they've really appreciated the support that we've given them. They came into the company with, no fibre experience and actually no full-time working experience. They came from part-time jobs, from education, and we've just really seen the benefit from growing them from the kind of ground up, and the work that we've got from them has just been incredible, and their attitudes, it's the best way, in my opinion, to grow a company. Yeah, and we've really felt the benefit, and it's amazing to have such a diverse group of apprentices that come from all different walks of life, which really creates the amazing company culture that we have.
Thank you, Lauren. That was very, very helpful, very interesting indeed. To my 2 final panelists, Mariana, how would you answer the question, your viewpoint?
Hi, Stephen. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure. So, as an apprentice, I can see, in my point of view, the apprenticeship have a huge role in somebody's life, because the apprenticeship doesn't judge you by your age, by gender, by your color, by anything. It just gives you an opportunity to start from scratch. So it doesn't matter if you have like 10 years of experience in something and start something from scratch, or if you've never had a job in your life and you don't know what you want to do. Apprenticeship is the way. So in my point of view, the apprenticeship has to grow even more, because I can see from my point of view, like in the company I'm working, the apprentices, how much effort and how much they love being there and how much they are growing. So yeah, I think apprenticeships are an amazing opportunity for everybody.
Thank you, Mariana. That was very helpful indeed. And lastly, Isa, I would very well welcome your insight from that question we posed.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. So it's interesting, at the risk of repeating some of the comments that have been made already by fellow panelists. It's interesting kind of listening, because I think one of the key things we want to see with apprenticeships is that whilst to the young and those who are taking up apprenticeships from young to up any age possible, the interesting thing about apprenticeships is that they allow organizations to meet skills gaps. So if you kind of think about the financial crash and how that gave a rise back to governments bringing initiatives to meet certain skills gaps for that period, what's happened now is that technology has shaped the way the future of work, the pandemic has shaped the future of work, and how we operate as institutions, as organizations, as individuals as well. And quite importantly, with technology kind of shaping the way we move, the nature of skills that needs to change, and fill some more critically, filling some of the critical skills gap that are needed, in which organizations need to operate and thrive, can be an opportunity. Now, how is the opportunity fulfilled? That's where apprenticeships can and are coming in, and to be able to kind of do that work, particularly that sort of training that's suitable for the future of work for anybody from any background, any age, means that any employer has now got the opportunity to fill critical skills gap with new forms of learning and into the upskilling and reskilling. And it's important also because where, you know, if it's existing staff acquiring new skills, or it's new talent, it's bringing fresh ideas and competencies for organizations that can really drive human, corporate, and economic performance. But also, employers are less and less likely to be reliant upon degrees and degree requirements. So apprenticeships can really bring fundamental opportunities for individuals to train and fill skills gaps that are can allow them to can progress their careers, but also raise their salaries and retain them. Employers can retain them throughout their career journey.
Thank you, Issa. That was very helpful, and I'm really interested to hear your insight and your experience in this area. This brings me on to wanting to ask a question to all of our panelists, and my first question is to Issa. Issa, can you tell us a little bit more about the work of the BAME Apprenticeship Alliance, and tell us why you think creating an exclusive apprenticeship opportunity is so important?
Yeah, so BAME Apprenticeship Alliance was formed in 2017. And we've been, a lot of our focus has been on sort of employer diversity. And what we believe is that the culture of an organization has a critical part to play when it comes to diversity inclusion in the workplace. There's no point in recruiting a plethora of individuals and talent from underrepresented communities to ensure that that you can diversify the talent pool when the culture is not right for the organization. So we've been doing a lot of work within the early stages of work with employers around their diversity. And now our model has been around educating them around Black, Asian, multi-ethnic representation, engaging with the Black, Asian, multi-ethnic communities, and then helping them to recruit from them. Understandably, the term BAME has its own challenges. And we recognize as an organization, and how we've worked with our employers is to really talk about the intersectionalities of race and ethnicity, to understand that Black communities have different challenges to Asian communities, to all the various different communities out there. But it's also addressing that there is an overall challenge that needs to be done, which is underrepresentation within communities. Now, from our perspective, what's important to us now is that young people are getting better opportunities or better access to opportunities, but then also that they are ready for their development when they're coming to apply for an apprenticeship. Put it into London context, I don't know if you can make it out from my accent, but I'm born and bred in Birmingham. I live here, we've recently moved into London to do some operations in London, and we're working in East London with a couple of schools there to really work with young people to develop themselves and ensure that they are application ready. Now, I don't mean interview ready, but I mean they understand who they are, what their skills are, what their knowledge, skills, and behaviors are. But more importantly, they can actually translate that into real life examples within their own life. So when it comes to an application, just imagine a 16-year-old who's never worked a day in his or her life, and now needs to prove to an employer that they are the right candidate. How do we do that? So it's about tapping into their existing talents that they've got and showing to an employer that they have translatable skills that even the young people do not recognize that they have to do that. And it's important for us today, actually, yesterday, we launched our ambition, our sort of vision ambition to work and engage with 5,000 young people from underrepresented communities across Birmingham, Manchester and London, but not necessarily doing an assembly and counting that as 150. It's actual tangible engagement with them to ensure that they leave us with a better understanding of who they are, what the capabilities they've got when they come to applying for an apprenticeship.
So that was very informative, and thank you for sharing that information about the Ambitious program. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there who are interested to know more about that, and perhaps building a talent pipeline with young people in schools who are about to embark into the world of work. We will certainly make that information available after the event through our follow-up. My next question is to Lauren. Lauren, as an employer, what can employers do to create an inclusive apprenticeship opportunities while aiming to address the lack of diversity or talent within their sector or industry? Be interested to hear your input.
Thank you, Stephen. Love this question. I could talk about it for hours. So we realised that there was probably 100 little things we had to do to correct things such as the inequality in gender in the telecoms industry. So one of our personal company goals is to actually achieve a 50-50 sort of gender split in our installation technicians team. We realised that some of our competitors have very male-based teams, and we just didn't see any reason as to why we should have to follow suit. So, and that comes, well, we thought about diversity inclusion as a whole. So yeah, as I said, there was 100 little things that we had to do, and we decided to take it right back to the recruitment process. So we realised that we have to make our recruitment process very, very accessible. We hold, or we're holding assessment days virtually, which meant that people could join, they could apply for a job with us. If they were successful in that process, they join an assessment day with a bunch of other people, and we give them an interview, they do a group task, and that was all done virtually in the hope that you know, that makes it easier for people to actually go through our interview process. We will actually be holding those in person soon, but again, we're trying to make that very accessible. So we will do things like provide travel cards for people that want to come into the office but perhaps can't afford to come in for an interview. We will help them with perhaps putting together a CV. Maybe they don't have a laptop at home. So we've taken it right back to that very first step, which is actually how do they apply for the job? And even with things like making the timings accessible for the assessment days. So we will run a couple of different assessment days with different timings on different days to cater for people that perhaps need to deal with childcare, or they have other commitments, they have jobs that they're in already. Yes, and once they've been successful with us, we realised that we have to provide quite an intense level of support sometimes. We have people joining our team from all walks of life. So we realised that when you join a job, you may not be in a great financial position. So anybody that joins our training academy that joins as an apprentice, we give them £150 support bursary within their first week. And that's to help them with perhaps their travel to get into work, to, you know, buy a new bag, anything that will help them settle into their first week. We then give them absolutely everything that they need to succeed in the job. So again, there's no pressure on them to have, you know, to pay out for things that they need to do a job or start an apprenticeship. So we give them the best equipment and tools and uniform. Everything is supplied to them, so they can just bring their best selves to work, and we do the rest. We really try to support our apprentices when they are here in terms of providing free mental health support. So again, we realise that you know, making our jobs very, very accessible means that we get everybody from all walks of life, which again creates this amazing, diverse company. And with that, we appreciate that people may come with, you know, problems at home, financial difficulties. We've seen a lot of different things that we need to help people with. So as I said, we provide free mental health care. We also have we provide one-to-one financial well-being sessions. So you can actually book a session with a financial advisor and they can talk through, you know, how to set up a savings account, or you can come to them and say, I'm in £5,000 worth of debt. Could you help me figure out how I can? And we realize that those things can really make an impact on somebody's career. And if, you know, if they're stressed out because they've got financial difficulties, that could impact how they act at work and their apprenticeship. So we try and alleviate as much of that stress as we can. We have a real big focus on career progression as well. And I think what's really great is to see apprentices joining us that have maybe never been given this opportunity because, you know, they didn't have a CV that, you know, they didn't get called from their CV, or perhaps they couldn't actually afford to show up for an interview. So once they get here, then we're super passionate about, right, what is their career progression? What are the qualifications that we can help them achieve? How do we give them the best in-house training and really support them on their full journey here? And we actually promote apprentices while they're still apprentices. So just because they come in as an apprentice, doesn't mean that they're capped at that level. They can be an apprentice and then they can move up to a team leader. While they're still studying, they have more responsibilities. They can actually go out and lead teams, and we found that really helps with morale. You know, they do often an 18-month apprenticeship, so we try and keep them. I think that helps keep them engaged and keep them wanting to be on the course. Yeah, so they're just some of the many things that we do to really support our diverse and inclusive workforce.
Wow, that's fantastic. Wow, that really is, it just goes to show the investment an employer prepared to put into their workforce at the very beginning of their journey. Is what, you know, you plant what you sow, as they say. But I think that's amazing what Vorboss is doing, and I think a lot of employers out there will be keen to learn from that and reuse that in their own organisation. Food for thought. This brings me on to my next question for Mariana, who is an apprentice working at Pracedo. Mariana, I'm really interested to hear from you as an apprentice in terms of your experience before and during your journey, and also how inclusive have you found the recruitment process? And, you know, from your perspective now working towards your level 4, what would you suggest in terms of what could be improved and what perhaps employers or other organisations listening today could hear and perhaps apply in their own business?
Wonderful. Stephen, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. So let me introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Mariana. I'm 33 years old. And 5 months ago, I have started my apprenticeship journey at Pracedo as an associate consultant. So I graduated in 2010 and I have a bachelor's degree in biotechnology. And after my graduation, I moved to the UK and I started working in a lab. It didn't take too much for me to realize that I wasn't supposed to be doing that. But unfortunately, it took me many, many years to get out of my zone of comfort and look for something that would actually make me happy. So by 2018, I decided to start learning coding. It should have taken me 1 year to finish the course, but back then I had 1 full-time job and 2 part-time jobs. So it took me a little bit more than 2 years to graduate. And after the graduation, I felt lost, absolutely lost. I was still working in the lab, and at the same time, I was sending CVs to every junior developer role you can possibly imagine. Didn't know what I was doing, no, but there I was, applying and applying, doing many, many, many interviews and going nowhere. So when everything changed was May last year. A friend of mine, she knew I had a passion about technology and I was searching for a new career. And she sent me a link to apply for an apprenticeship. This apprenticeship opportunity was to learn Salesforce for a month and after be part of the apprenticeship program and acquire the business analyst level 4 certification. So I applied in July and I received an email saying that I was accepted. I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier. So I was accepted by the LDN Apprenticeships in the Talent Path program, and this just changed everything. I never thought I would be suitable for apprenticeship. I always thought like, no, my time has gone, I'm too old. So by the end of July, I started a Salesforce admin course with the LDN. And before the end of that month, Salesforce had me. No exaggeration, that was everything I was looking for. I was absolutely in love with it. So my mentor at LDN, Jay, he saw that I had a passion for it, and he had recommended me to a wonderful company called Pracedo. So they have invited me to a couple of interviews to get to know me better, to know my motivations. And after a while, I was offered the position of associate consultant. And of course, I have accepted. So before that moment, there were many, many times I thought, no, 33, too old. Oh no, I've wasted like 7 years of my life working in the wrong career path. Now, too late for me. And thank God I didn't listen to none of it. Because as I said before, there's no judgment when it comes to apprenticeship. There's only opportunities. So in September, I started my journey in Pracedo as an associate consultant, and I couldn't be happier. Since day one, I've been supported by everyone. Everybody wants you to feel welcomed and that you can count on them. And being an apprentice has been nothing but wonderful. Every single day I learn something new, and I know I'm on the right path. So if there's something I learned since I started my apprenticeship is your passions, your hobbies are not just hobbies. If you like to do something, if you're good at doing something, go for it. There's so many possibilities out there. There's so much you can do with your qualities. And I wouldn't have found my happy place if it wasn't for the apprenticeship opportunity. So by April next year, I'm going to be finishing my journey, my 18 months apprenticeship. And I'm so happy that this has given me a happy career, something I've always been looking for. And this all can happen thanks to the opportunity that LDN Apprenticeships and Pracedo has given to me. So go for it, guys. Apprenticeships are amazing. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Wow, Mariana, thank you for that endorsement. I mean, that's amazing. And also, I think you touched on there's so many facets there that you covered, just for the very fact of, apprenticeship is not just for young people, it's for all ages. I think you addressed that. That's brilliant. And also the journey, and also dealing with your own challenges to get where you are. So that's amazing. I wish you every success in your endeavor, and we're keen to hear more. And where you are in a year's time, yes, we want to hear more. Finally, I'd like to bring my final panelists to bear a question. James, I have a question for yourself and for Generating Success. What are the specific challenges and opportunities ensuring that apprenticeships are truly inclusive in the workplace in terms of recruitment, but also the learner experience throughout their journey on their apprenticeship program? We're here to hear from you.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Stephen. And one of the things I'd love to say, the reason why I love this question is that there are so many challenges and opportunities throughout. We say there's 14 stages of a candidate employee journey for us to kind of address the challenges and create opportunities within that. You've seen kind of Lauren and Marina, some of the things I'm going to tell you they've already covered in their answers. But I'm going to break it out into 3 things for employers. So when you think about the candidate employee journey, the first thing you need to do is think about all the different social mobility factors that will put them on the back foot when they join. So Lauren talked about not having enough money to buy equipment, not having a CV right, not knowing about what's expected within a professional environment. So think about all the things that will put them on the back foot. The second thing is create experiences that will make them feel that this is a great place to work, but also that they can excel as their individual self. And that's not easy to do. But if you are focused on the minute stages, you can make that happen. And the third thing is to create feedback loops and learnings along the way. So at every touch point with a potential employee or an employee, ask them, even at interview, how did you find us? How did you find the interview? What could we do better? Create those feedback loops, not just in terms of surveys and post stuff, but also try to get that verbal feedback as well to get the fruit of the insights that you'll need to really create an inclusive workplace. Now, there are different stages, and I said there's 14, but let me break it down into pre-employment. Majority of candidates are not active. Majority of people who say they want a job are not looking. And a lot of employers say, I can't find candidates. I can't find the talent out there. Now, we say the talent is out there, but employers just don't know where to access them. And you've got two options. You can either buy your way in, so find an organization like Generation Success, like the Apprenticeship Alliance, or organizations have access to that talent pool, or you work your way in. And there's opportunities to work your way in at schools, in different places. You have to identify what is right for your talent acquisition strategy. The other thing is being an attractive employer. So Lauren has already touched upon that, where she's talked about everything she talked about is really their employer value proposition. But also, if I look at their website, they've done everything right. They've got a microsite, they've got language, they've got pictures that make someone feel that actually this is the place I want to go and work in. And a lot of employers aren't getting those fundamentals right. At assessment stage and interview stage is, once again, social mobility factors, ensuring that you have the right framework to assess between competence and fit, and ensuring that you're creating fairness along the process. Job offer and onboarding, starting and progression. Every single stage, there are still opportunities. I spent some time last year kind of training the heads of recruitment at HSBC, Aon, Pinson Mason, and really kind of challenging their paradigms, challenging their thinking as to what they can do to really level the playing field, level the playing field and create a workforce that they love and be proud of in years to come.
James, thank you so much. You've touched on a number of key points there. And I think it's amazing that you've drawn those out. I think a lot of the attendees that are listening today will want to embrace that and explore that further. Many of them will still be using it, but also maybe looking at some people who may want to explore that in a different way to engage that diversity in our workplace and reflect society. So we touched on some key points there, and also the reference to those pre-employability programs. As we know, the government's got an array of skills intervention programs, from Kickstart programs, digital Kickstart boot camps, to internships, traineeships, and T-level programs, which all leads on in preparation to lead them to success onto an apprenticeship. What we want to do is set them up to succeed and make sure they've got everything in place, ready to go. Before we go on to our Q&A session, I've got one last question I want to ask our panelists, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A from our audience, who are probably eager to ask you all questions. Question I'd like to ask our panelists today is, what would be your top 3 tips for a recruiting employer who are seeking to access a more diverse talent pool of candidates and offer them an inclusive apprenticeship experience? If I could ask Isa, that same question, please.
I think it's quite similar to one of the questions I've been asked by, I hopefully pronounced it correctly, is Gillies on all the question and answers. And so if I was to kind of go back to fundamentals, I'd say number 1 is understand the community you serve, or where your company serves. That'll give you a better understanding of the demographic that you have. The second part I would say is to kind of make it inclusive, is speak to existing employees within the organization, understand their lived experiences, particularly their journey coming into employment within the organization and their progression within the organization. And thirdly is looking at data within the organization, employee data, understanding the data and progression data of individuals from underrepresented backgrounds, using that data to better understand where you are right now and where you want to be. There's no point in knowing the destination of where you want to be if you don't know where you are to start with, especially if it works in any way, shape you think about it. but importantly, share that on a wider with the wider audience and with wider employees within the organization for accountability, not necessarily to feel embarrassed about something, because in fact it actually shows that when you want accountability, you'll get the buy-in from employees, and that's how one of the fundamentals of retention is to ensure that employees feel as though they are part of the solution, and to do that by sharing that information can bring that accountability through.
Thank you, Issa. That was very helpful. Mariana, I'm mindful that as we are moving towards Q&A, so I'd be interested to hear what would your top 3 tips be?
So echoing what Issa said, I do believe the company has to know where they are and know like the data, like what, like Lauren said, like what are the percentages of like gender in my company? Is it 50-50 or is like 70-30? You have to look around and see like what am I missing here? Look around for your employees and see if they might have people that they can introduce to your company, people that can be applicants there. Because if you're only looking in one place, if you're only looking, let's say, in your LinkedIn, there are so many people that they don't have access to LinkedIn, they haven't created, they might not even know LinkedIn exists. So you might have to look around more. And the third tip I would say is make the interviews less technical and more person focused, because you can train somebody to be great at doing something. You can train them, but you cannot change who they are. So focus more on who they are as a person instead of the technical skills. You can build technical skills, but you cannot change who somebody is.
Thank you, Mariana. Lauren, that's very helpful. Lauren, in view of the same question, how would you answer that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So I think, again, taking it one step back, and the language that you use on job descriptions is actually really important. I briefly touched on recruiting more women in particular into the telecoms industry, because we found that a lot of the language on job descriptions generally for installation technician, apprentices, or anything to do without being in the field was incredibly masculine, and naturally a lot of women were put off by the language, or just feeling as though they were incapable of doing a job like that. So yeah, I think being aware of how you're describing the job and making it very sort of neutral, we found really helped us actually have more people apply, which was great. And I think from the start, thinking about how career progression can work in those roles. And as I said, we don't hold our apprentices back from actually being promoted, which I believe is perhaps quite rare. So I think be very open-minded, and, you know, you're bringing in these great people and they're probably going to be quite ambitious. So be prepared with, you know, what does the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, what could that look like if they work hard and really prove themselves? And then thirdly, I don't want to talk it to death, but the support that you give them is very important. So yeah, those are my 3 things.
Thank you, Laura. That's really helpful. And I think there's some really valuable messages in there that you just shared, and also from our other panelists. James, keen to hear what your insight would be in these 3 tips.
You've restricted me down to 3. How could you?
I can do more, but I'm conscious that our audience have got, I can see the questions are piling in, so I want to give them the opportunity as well.
Love it. So in terms of 3, the first one is mindset. Mindset of you, the employer. So one, as a society, we live in a very short-term thinking and risk-adverse economy. So that short-term thinking means that we're not doing enough to invest in our people longer term. And risk-adverse means that we are scared to do things differently, whether that is recruiting, whether that's retaining, and whether that's helping staff progress. Challenge that thinking. You know, when I did that workshop with those heads of recruitment, one of the first things we said to them was, think of all the ways you can make it impossible for people of color to work in your organization. And they listed it all down. And they were like, yeah, we've done it. I was like, are you sure? Because actually, you know, like, what else could you do? Came back, yeah, we've done it. I was like, no, you know, all the different ways. There's so many more ways. Think about back in the 80s, the 40s, what was put in place. So keep on challenging your thinking in terms of what else we can do. And also in that mindset, do not rest on your laurels. Do not say we've got a diverse workforce. We see that in our data, because actually the numbers tell you one thing. It tells you've got a diverse range of people, but actually, what does that mean in practice to the individual experience of your people? Do they feel included? Do they feel like they can progress? So mindset, challenge your mindset. The second, of course, is all the different social mobility factors that will put people at the back foot, because it impacts them, not just for junior hires, but also all the way up to senior hires. The same factors influence this, the career outcomes for diverse and people from underrepresented backgrounds. And the third, of course, is the feedback loops. So like I said, data is really important, but unless you understand the context behind that data, you can tell the story that you want to tell. You can tell your own story that could come from your own biased place, which is, I want my company is the most inclusive company in the world. But if your people don't feel that, then any investment you make into trying to bring in new people will just be like an investment in the bucket with a hole in it. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, James. That's amazing. Again, those wonderful tips. And I hope everybody who've shared those insights from our audience that can take away and apply. I'm mindful that we're coming towards our Q&As and as the questions are coming in. So I'd like to go to our Q&A and ask some questions to our audience, from our audience to our panelists. So I'm looking here, I can see one question's come in. Questions come from Tom, Skill Builder. What do panelists see as the ideal way to join the dots between education, training and employment in terms of language and learning to provide a consistency and the transferability of individual strengths? If I could ask Isa, and then I'll ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think James touched on a bit of it earlier, as quite a few of the panelists touched on a bit of it earlier. And I think, yeah, James mentioned the various stages of recruitment cycle. I think it's breaking down the recruitment cycle into the various individual parts and understanding what each of that part needs. So, for example, looking at the attraction strategy. So how we look at it is from the attraction and recruitment as one part, and then the retention progression is another part. And if you look at attraction recruitment from our perspective, it's kind of ensuring that the individuals have the best amount of knowledge available to them that doesn't, number one, overwhelm them. So it's delivered not in the form of 3 books, but in the form of making it visually and audibly easy for them to understand. But at the same time, it provides enough information that they gather enough information about the role they have there. Now, what we look at from a social mobility perspective is, and this is advice for employers, but then I'll show you how we use that for young people as well. So we think of the 5 pillars of social mobility, which is opportunity, progression, skills, job security, and money. So in looking at the 5 pillars of social mobility, we think of if the employer shows that there's an opportunity there, but that the individual can progress within the organization, then, but attached to it is skills and the fact that the job is secure, then that gets the employer's opportunity more brandable for the young person. But importantly, money plays a critical part to show that money is a fundamental part of that. You're getting paid for it, but not. And I don't know whether all employers agree with me on this, but I don't personally believe that apprentices should be paid the apprentice wage. I believe that, especially when it comes to social mobility, the apprentice wage does not allow young people to become more socially mobile, especially if they work in a full-time job, as though they would work in a fast food restaurant where it's £7 an hour, £9 an hour, but you're paying them £4 an hour. Social mobility plays a critical part. That's where employers can start when it comes to making their opportunities much more accessible and inclusive and also diverse.
Thank you there, Isa. That was very helpful. I have another question that's come through. I'm just looking through our list here. There's quite a good list of questions that's coming through. So the question I have has come through from Ian Higgsbottom. And his question is to the panel. Employers often wish to diversify their workforce to a greater degree, but tend to stick with the same recruitment methods. What more could be done to update the perception of apprenticeships when recruiters are often got no personal experience? If I could ask James, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, no, so that's a great question. And there's several things we talk about. You know, I spoke about the stages of the candidate journey, and I also talked about the experiences that you want them to have at each stage. If you start to think about it as you want to control the perception of the candidate at each stage of the journey, that will help you create interventions or your own interventions into that process, because it is unique for each employer. So we say to each employer, look at your culture, look at your values, look at your resources and assets. So Lauren talked about the equipment, the funding that they give, they have the mental health days. You know, apply all of that into all the stages within the candidate journey to really show them that you are the place for them. And then the second part was work your way in or buy your way in. So, you know, find organizations, find the locations where you have a cluster of the types of people you're looking for. Because actually it's not just, the other thing is, employers say we're looking for candidates, but they don't have a candidate persona, because there are, you know, millions of people in the UK, but only a certain profile and type will fit your company culture and ethos. It's only, so don't just do a sporadic approach, be really focused and conscious of what you're trying to do. Oh, and then, sorry, also in terms of the last question, Tom, your question was, I say a consistent skills framework that everyone agrees to. So like Skills Builder, you've got a great framework. And the second is a long-term government strategy and funding framework when it comes to education to employment. And I'm currently part of a commission trying to create a 30-year plan that's cross-party supported for our education system. Because at the moment it's too short-term and not consistent enough. Sorry. Back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, James. Thank you. I'm mindful as we're coming towards the end. So I have a number of questions, and I'm going to ask one other question to our audience, from the audience. So the question I've had come up here is, I think this was aimed from Lauren in terms of Lauren's experience and sharing that from Vorboss. And the question is, do you think it would help to get a diverse cohort in the door and retain them? And do you have any plans to build on the work that you're doing? I think we could all learn something different. We can all learn something.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. So we do plan on building a bigger, adding to our existing apprentice team, which is very exciting. So we actually are going to look at hiring another 60. So we've really been thinking about how this looks when we've got almost 200 apprentices and trainees on the installation team. I think we've found that it's something that we have to work on every single day. If we just conform to the norm, then we won't have a diverse workforce anymore. So every single day where we have to work on it, we have to think about how we actually get these people to apply, and how we get them through the door, and how we get them to join us and retain them. I think that's a great point. And I think that comes into, again, thinking about their career progression, thinking about how we support them on a daily basis. I forgot to add as well that we have a welfare team. So there's a couple of us that sit down every single week and go through any problems that we know people are having, whether that's personal that's been raised with us, or anything to do with their performance or work. So we actually have a very kind of people first, individual support approach as well. And I'm really excited about something else we brought in, which I'll just touch on briefly, which is we have 2 new wellbeing officers, and they go out in vans every day to our team that are out in the field, and in their van they have a microwave, a bathroom, and they are experienced in actually supporting people on an emotional level. So we've added that in as well, which I believe will actually really retain our growing installation team. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. I'm mindful that we're almost on the hour, so I'm mindful of. Firstly, I'd like to thank a big thank you to Jules Pipe, Deputy Mayor, for his insight and input to kick us off. I'd like to also thank our panelists for your insight and contribution. Before we go, I just want to remind all our attendees today that this recording will be made available, and we'll be doing a follow-up. More importantly, we have one more event coming up on Friday, and that event is looking at the impact of apprenticeship levy transfer. We'll have an insight from both two large employers, Compass and Mighty, but also from an SME and the impact of levy transfer for their business and for their apprenticeship. So please sign up for that. It leaves me to say thank you, have a good day. If you want to learn more about us, please visit our website. We are at the end of the holding card, sharing us all our details. Thank you, Dan. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Goodbye.